So good morning, everybody, and our portion today is VaYeitzei. In the Eitz Chaim, we're on page 166. Whatever edition of Chumash you have, you're looking for VaYeitzei or Genesis chapter 28, beginning with verse 10. The blessing for a Torah study, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So I'm just going to wait, one more person coming in, and I want to mute everybody. Just a second. Okay, so I will mute all right now. Good. So if anybody has a question or a comment, you can unmute yourself at any point and interrupt at any time to do that. Or if you don't want to do it that way, you can always go down to the chat that on, at least on my edition of Zoom, on my laptop, you see the word chat on the bottom of your screen. Just click on that and you can start typing question or comment in whatever way you want. If you just wave your hand to say that you have a question, I may not see you. So just feel free to unmute. So again, so good morning, all those who just came in. We're on page 166 in the Eitz Chaim. The portion is VaYeitzei, Genesis chapter 28, verse 10. As is now, has been the case for the past several weeks, our portions begin in what seems to be the middle of a chapter. Obviously, the portions begin with a new topic, but the way the chapters and verses have been divided, it seems unusual that we're starting at verse 10 instead of the first verse of the chapter. So, of course, we have to look back to see what the context is, because the very first verse is VaYeitzei Yaakov mi Be'er Shava, Vayelech Harana. One thing about pronunciation of the Hebrew, to know which syllable of a word is to be emphasized, you just have to look at the cantillation mark under the word, under or above the word. Whatever syllable the cantillation mark is located, that's the syllable that's emphasized. So my go-to is to say VaYeitzei. It's the more common way of saying it, but as you see from the cantillation mark, we're supposed to say VaYeitzei, because that's where that mark is. You see the vowel under the tzadi, the two dots under the letter tzadi. Next to the two dots on the left of it is a curve, and that curve is a cantillation mark. It tells you how to sing the words. So in every edition of the Chumash, not only do you have the vowels there, but you also have these marks, which are traditional for the entire Bible. Every book of the Bible has cantillation marks, and we know that that's how you sing them. So the Torah has a particular tune to it. The Haftarah has a different tune to it. Same system of marks, it's just a different tune. Anyway, just so that you know, to help you in practicing reading Hebrew, look to the cantillation mark to understand how to emphasize instead of how to. The cantillation mark will tell you which syllable needs to be emphasized. Okay, so the VaYeitzei Yaakov mi Be'er Shava, Jacob left Be'er Sheva, Vayelech Harana, and he went towards Haran. So now we have to look back to page 160, or which is the end of the portion Toldot, chapter 28, beginning with verse 5. There we see the context. Vayishlach Yitzchak et Yaakov. Isaac sent Jacob, or sent him away. Better. Isaac sent Jacob away. Vayelech Padena Aram, and he went towards Padan Aram, El Lavan ben Betuel Ha'arami, to Lavan, son of Betuel, the Aramean, who we know is Achi Rivka, the brother of Rebekah, Aim Yaakov the Esav, the mother of Jacob and Esau. So the Torah tells us here, after Jacob and Esau had received blessings from their father Isaac, Jacob getting the seemingly better blessing that really made Isaac very upset. No, Esau very upset. Esau wanting to kill his brother, and Rebekah finding out that Esau wanted to kill Isaac. And so they said, okay, better get out of town, Jacob. And so we're told here in verse 5 that Isaac sent Jacob away towards Padan Aram, to Betuel the Aramean, to his uncle Laban, son of Betuel the Aramean. Okay, and then we have a parenthetical note from verses 6 to 9 that Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent Jacob to Padan Aram to get a wife there, and knowing from his blessing that he was commanded not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan, Jacob listened to his father and his mother, and he went to Padan Aram. Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan are evil in the eyes of Isaac, his father. So Esau went to Ishmael and took from, and he took Machalat, the daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, sister of Nevayot, as a wife as a wife, right? So he took his cousin. Yes, he took his first cousin to be his wife. So so Esau, even here, after Jacob has deceived him, and he heard through the grapevine, because Isaac did not tell Esau directly not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. He only told Jacob not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. So Esau decided to listen as well and took a wife from other member of the family, from his own cousin, from Ishmael. So he took a daughter of Ishmael, not a daughter of Canaan, perhaps to curry favor, perhaps to show, hey, Dad, I'm listening to your commandment also. I might not have received the best blessing, but at least I'm listening to you, and I'm also going to try to stay within the covenant and not take a daughter from a woman from Canaan to be a wife. So I think this is a very telling point here that we kind of pass over, and there's no commentary over, but just no commentary about, but just to keep in mind that Esau is not such a bad character. He doesn't do anything outside of the covenant here. Yes, from what we learned last week and what we saw in the portion, yes, he sold his birthright to Jacob. Okay, what's the big deal? And he was hungry and he was a hunter. But again, there's nothing wrong with being a hunter in the Torah so far. There's nothing wrong with that. And all the midrash that we saw about Esau being an idolater, that's just midrash, and it's really, just by reading the text, not fair for the rabbis to do this to him, especially here at the end in this what seemingly parenthetical note that Esau himself is trying to follow the covenant and listen to his father and not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. He's trying, but he doesn't understand that Ishmael's an outsider himself too, not really part of the covenant itself. And so tragically, Esau is left on the outs. And we'll see Esau again in next week's portion. And we'll see what the rabbis do there too, to try to continue to reinforce the message that Esau is a bad guy. So now we have from verse 5 on page 160, verse 5 of chapter 28, that Isaac sent Jacob to Padan Aram, and then we see in verse 7 that he went towards Padan Aram. Now, verse 10, the start of VaYeitzei. VaYeitzei Yaakov mi Be'er Sheva vayelech Harana. So Jacob left Be'er Sheva and went towards Haran. Okay, so now this just could be an editorial feature just to get us back after just telling us that Esau married Machalat, get us back to the story now that Jacob left Be'er Sheva and went towards Haran. Haran's the bigger place in which we find Padan Aram. Haran's the region, Padan Aram is the village in that region. So it doesn't seem like there would be anything to comment about here in verse 10, because it just seems as if we're just being brought back to the subject, that we want to now focus on Jacob and what happens to Jacob. But there's an interesting comment below the line about verse 10. So Jacob left Be'er Sheva. Why does the Torah, ordinarily so sparing of words, include this detail? So in other words, why bother telling us that he left Be'er Sheva if it's telling us he's going towards Haran, right? It's just enough to say Jacob was on the journey. We already know he's on the journey. So why does the Torah have to tell us that he left one place and is going towards another place? And so the rabbis, who are very, very careful readers of the text, they're one important interpretive concept for the rabbis is, and this they keep in mind all the time, there are no extraneous words or letters in the Torah. That's a basic principle that the rabbis have. No extraneous words or even letters in the Torah. And if there is an extraneous word or phrase or extraneous letter, then it's there to say darsheni, interpret me. So whether it's to derive Jewish law from an extra letter, or just to detail psychological insight or plot detail or something like that, it's there to understand that we're supposed to learn a lesson from it, right? And there's in the Talmud, we know that Rabbi Akiva was famous for deriving Jewish law, even not only from just an extra letter in a word, but even from the crowns that are decorated on top of, added as decoration on top of some letters in the Torah. So back in the day when we took the Torah out of the ark, and you had the experience of having an aliyah, of being called to the Torah, you may remember what the Torah scroll looks like and how what the font looks like on the scroll, in the scroll itself. And you know that some letters have decorative three-pronged kind of crown attached to some letters. So that, according to the rabbis of the Talmud, even those crowns, Rabbi Akiva was willing to interpret to derive Jewish law. So the reason for that is that according to the rabbis, the Torah was hand-given, so to speak, by God to Moses at Mount Sinai, so to speak, because that would mean that God has a hand. Somehow it was delivered by God to Moses at Mount Sinai. So if the Torah, according to the rabbis, is all from God and God is perfect, then everything in the Torah has to be perfect. And if we see something in the Torah that seems to be an imperfection, then it must be there for a reason, because there can't be imperfections in the Torah. All right, so an extraneous detail would be such an imperfection, and that's this detail. Why do we need to know that he left Be'er Sheva? We only need to know that he went towards Padan Aram. So the Midrash says, continuing on the bottom of 166, below the line, when a good person leaves a community, it is no longer the same place. So that's an interesting detail, that from Jacob leaving Beersheba, we get the bigger detail first, that Jacob is a righteous person. He's one of the patriarchs, so according to the rabbis, he's a righteous person. So when a righteous person leaves a town, and the fact that the Torah has to tell us that he left Beersheba, then that means Beersheba now is has now been diminished in stature because Jacob is no longer there. So don't think that this is just just an editorial comment about Jacob leaving Beersheba. No, no, no. Never read the Torah as any other work of literature. The rabbis are saying the Torah itself is God's word, and every single word in the Torah is meant to be a lesson is meant to be derived from it, and even some innocuous comment like this to get us back on track about where Jacob is going is not innocuous, but rather there to teach us righteous people in the town that they are in. They are the ones that provide stature to the town, and if a righteous person leaves that town, then that town is diminished in stature. So you can apply this, of course, to it would be a verse that one could use in a eulogy, God forbid, for anybody, to say, especially a eulogy for someone important. You could use this verse to say, now we are all diminished because of the loss of this person. So it's not just the physical distancing, but also it could be used for a eulogy. So now the Torah continues. Vayifga b'makom, he came to a place, he came to the place, we don't know which place. Vayalen sham kiva hashemesh, and he lay down there because the sun came. I'm translating it literally. The English translation here helps us by saying he came upon a certain place. Again, we don't know what that place is, and stopped there for the night, for the sun had set. Kiva hashemesh, literally the sun came. There is a word for sunset, but the Torah doesn't use it here. It could say ki shaka hashemesh. That would be that the sun set, but here for the Torah it's kiva hashemesh. The sun came to its resting place below the horizon. Vayikach me'avnei hamakom, and he took from the stones or the rocks of the place, vayasem mera'ashotav, and he put it underneath his head, vayishkav b'makom hahu, and he lay down in that place. So we don't know what place it is, but it's that place. We'll learn about that place in a few verses. Now, there is Midrash, but it's not here below the line. There's Midrash about the stones themselves talking to each other, saying, I want to be the stone that Jacob chooses to put his head on. No, I want to be the stone that Jacob chooses to put his head on. So it's something that the rabbis do as a set storyline. Like, for example, why was Mount Moriah, the mountain chosen by God for Abraham to take Isaac to? So there's stories there in the Midrash about what was so special about Mount Moriah. What was so special about Mount Sinai for it to be chosen for the Torah to be given. And there's lots of Midrashim about that. Why did Noah choose the dove? Like I shared with you that story, that Isaac Basheva Singer story a few weeks ago for that portion, which is based on the Midrash. What's so special about why did the Torah begin with the letter Bet for Bereshit as opposed to any other letter of the alphabet? So it's a common theme for the rabbis to answer the question, which we don't even think is a question. Why that stone as opposed to any other stone? For to provide an opportunity to teach a lesson about humility or whatever it is. Okay, so he lay down in that place, and then immediately, verse 12, Vayachalom, and he dreamed. V'hinei sulam mutzav artza, and behold, hine literally means here, but often it means behold, and behold, sulam mutzav artza. Now, the English translation says stairway. Sulam in modern Hebrew means a ladder. So whatever it is, it's whether it's a ladder or a stairway, it's something in which you are climbing up or climbing down. It has steps on it, whether it's a ladder and has rungs or it's a stairway and has actual steps. There's a stairway that was set up on the ground. Virosho magia hashamayama, and the top of it, so they're literally the head of it, but the top of this sulam, this ladder or stairway, magia, reaches to the heavens or to the sky. It reached up to the sky. So this is what Jacob is dreaming, a ladder or a stairway that is set on the ground, whose top reaches into the sky. Vehine malachei Elohim olim veyordim bo. And behold, angels of God were rising, were ascending and descending upon it. Okay, so now, obviously, the rabbis have to comment and figure out what is the meaning behind this stairway and what is the meaning of these angels going up and down. So now, if we look at the commentary below the line to get a sense of what the rabbis are telling us about what the nature of this stairway is and these angels, what these angels are doing on it. A stairway, the first comment here for verse 12. We ascend toward God one step at a time, making one small change in our lives and stabilizing it before we take another step. Sometimes we slip and miss a step, falling back, but we recover and keep climbing. Most people do not leap toward God in one great burst of enthusiasm. So clearly for this commentary, the modern commentary, we're understanding, obviously, that this dream is a metaphor. Interpreting dreams is very important. Lots of cultures, lots of religions hold lots of stock in dreams that you have. And in fact, in the tractate Brachot of the Talmud, there's many, many pages discussing different things you might have dreamt about at night and what that means when you wake up in the morning. So that if you dream of a particular animal, even if you dream of a particular animal doing something, then this, the rabbis say, is what it means, and whether it's a good sign or it's a bad sign. So if you're dreaming of a donkey or a camel or a horse or an elephant or a monkey, I'm not making these up, they're all in the Talmud, and they're doing some particular action, then that's what the dream means. So for the rabbis, a dream is an opportunity. Now, for Freud, dreams, are a key to our subconscious. Okay, so the rabbis didn't understand it that way. The rabbis understood that dreams are important, but that not that they tell something about ourselves, but rather it's a form of communication that God has with us. So if we remember our dreams, yes, now as moderns, we understand psychology and we understand dream interpretation in one particular way, and we can't help but think about that, what the dream, what the meaning of that dream is to, and even scientifically, what the purpose of a dream is in order to help our brains reset, kind of like a computer rebooting. or when you turn it off and it's kind of all the files are going into its place on the hard drive, kind of like that's what the brain is doing when we're dreaming, and kind of helping us make sense of things that have happened either that day or in previous weeks. Anyway, we know about the function of dreams, but the rabbis did not know that. The rabbis only knew that dreams were an opportunity of experiencing communication from God. And therefore, in the list that they have on the pages in the Talmud, where they're explaining what they think these images, common images that we might be dreaming about, what they could mean religiously. Okay? So, therefore, any dream that is reported about in the Torah is clearly understood to be a religious message. So the religious message that the commentator, the commentary below the line in our Chumash is trying to teach us is, think about this image of the angels coming up and down the ladder, and the idea that Jacob possibly could climb this ladder. It's an image for all of us to understand that our spiritual journey in life is like climbing a ladder. And we don't know how far up the ladder we're going to go by the time our life is over. But the point of our religious life is to try to climb as far up that ladder as we can. Sometimes we will have to step down the ladder, and other times two steps back, one step forward kind of idea. But that's the way our spiritual journey works. And that's the lesson that our Chumash wants us to learn from this ladder. Another lesson, which is not here in the Chumash, is about the word sulam itself. And this is another method of the rabbis' interpretation, and that to point out that every letter in the Torah has significance. And the rabbis developed this method called gematria, which is a word which refers to the system that every Hebrew letter has a numerical equivalent. And if you add up the numbers, the letters in a word, and you come up with a number, and if you can come up with another word that adds up to that number, then you can derive meaning from that first word. So let me show you an example before I get to this one. If we turn back to the portion Lech Lecha, to chapter 14. Chapter 14 in Genesis it begins in the VaYeitzei on page 77. But whatever edition of Chumash you're using, look to find chapter 14 of Genesis. Keep your place here in VaYeitzei. But we're told there's a war that's taking place between 5 kings against 4 kings. Okay, somewhere in the Dead Sea Valley area. And Lot, Abraham's nephew, is taken captive. Abraham goes with troops, with people, to try to save his nephew. So now, just one second. Okay, right, here it is. It's on page 80. Page 80. Which is chapter 14, verse 14. So now when Abram heard that his kinsman had been taken captive, he mustered his retainers, born into his household, numbering 318, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. Okay, Dan is a region, so the Torah is being kind of weird here. There's no area of Dan yet, because Dan is one of the sons of Jacob who becomes a tribe of Israel. And the reader of the Torah knows about the tribes of Israel, but they didn't exist yet at the time that this is happening. So the region of Dan is northern Israel. And the key here is he took 318 people with him. So again, the rabbis are saying, no extraneous details. If it's telling us 318, what does that mean? So here's gematria in action. Let me see. Yes. Okay. So we have to remember Abraham's servant is Eliezer, right? Abraham's servant is Eliezer, because we know that from the Chayei Sarah, when Abraham sends Eliezer back to Haran to find a wife for Isaac. Okay? If we add up the letters of Eliezer, I spell it out here. I don't know if you can see it very well. Do you see that? Aleph, Lamed, Yud, Ayin, Zayin, Resh. Do you see this on the piece of paper that I have in front of my face on the screen? Aleph, Lamed, Yud, Ayin, Zayin, Resh. I'm going to now write underneath it the numerical equivalents. Okay, the numerical equivalents of Aleph, Lamed, Yud, Ayin, Zayin, Resh. So someone who's good with math can add this up. 1, 30, 10, 70, 7, 200. What does that equal? Somebody just yell it out. What does 1, 30, 10, 70, 7, 200 equal?
$318.
318. Isn't that miraculous? So the Torah telling us that Abram took 318 members of his household with him. No, he only took Eliezer with him, and that's the miracle. Not just that he took 318 and he was able to infiltrate this war zone and get his nephew back. The real miracle was he only went with one person, Eliezer, to be able to get his nephew Lot out of captivity. So that's the miracle that shows then for the rabbis by using gematria that, and the Torah specifically saying 318. It didn't say 319. It didn't say 316. It didn't say 317. It said 318. Why such an unusual specific number? Well, it may be reasonable to say he only took Eliezer with him, and it highlights the miraculous nature, the power that was behind Abraham himself. And then, that, of course, there are other midrashim about how incredible a person Abraham was. He was, when he decided that monotheism is the appropriate belief system in where he lived in Haran, in Ur Kasdim, originally in Ur Kasdim, that he developed this idea that there was one God. Well, the emperor couldn't stand that, and he threw Abraham into a fiery furnace, and God saved him out of that fiery furnace. So we're supposed to know that midrash and include it as part of the story of the Torah, even though it's not in the Torah itself. Okay, so the gematria about Eliezer is one example that I wanted to highlight as we look at gematria here for verse 12. Back on page 166 now, about this sulam that is set on the ground, whose top is reaching into the heavens. So what is, so the below the line commentary, the modern commentary tells us about the religious nature of our life, that the journey of life religiously is like climbing a ladder, and we might be successful climbing it. We may not be, but that's okay. So that's a beautiful message itself. But for the rabbis, there's even a deeper lesson here. Sulam, if we take the letters Samach, Lamed, Mem, that means, so Samach is 60, Lamed is 30, Mem is 40. 60, 30, 40 is 130, I think. Yes, 60, 40 is 100, 30, it's 30, 130. Okay, so another word that is similar to this with exact same number is, you have to see if I wrote this big enough. That word right there, Sinai, Mount Sinai. Samach Yud Nun Yud. 60 is Samach. Nun is 50. 60 and 50 is 110. Yud, you got two Yuds, is 20. 110 and 20 is 130. Oh, so Mount Sinai is 130. Sulam is 130. Perhaps what Jacob is dreaming about is Mount Sinai itself, the place to go and experience God's presence and God's revelation, right? So for the rabbis, gematria, it might be a silly kind of thing, a fun kind of game, but really what it is, it's even, the rabbis take a lot of stock in this. In fact, there's a tradition that every Hebrew name that is given, that we have, there's a verse from the Bible that would be associated with your name. That let's say my Hebrew name is Yonah. So the Yud and the Hey from the beginning and the end, you find a verse in the Bible that has a Yud at the beginning and a Hey at the end, and that's the verse that's appropriate for you. Or also you take a verse, especially from Psalm 119. Psalm 119 has 8 verses for every Hebrew letter of the alphabet. And all these verses talk about religious, ethical, moral values that we want to try to uphold in our life. So Psalm 119 is a beautiful psalm to use to kind of spell out somebody's name. You take the letter, so let's say Yonah, Yud, Vav, Nun, Hey. You find a Yud verse from Psalm 119, a Vav verse, a Nun verse, and a Hey verse. And then you can even do your second name too, your middle name. Shmuel is mine, so Shin, Mem, Vav, Aleph, Lamed. Find all these verses, and these could be verses that are associated with your name to highlight the religious values that you're supposed to uphold based on your name. So if you want, after class, you can email me or just look up in Psalm 119 yourself in your Bible, figure out how your Hebrew name or Yiddish name is spelled, and then find verses from Psalm 119 that would fit in with your name. So this is what the rabbis do to find hidden meaning in the text. And so gematria might be silly, kind of like a child's game to play, but for the rabbis, no. It's deeper meaning. It's kind of like a book that came out 20 or 30 years ago called the Bible Codes. Kind of like if you take the first word of chapter 1 and the second word of chapter 2, you're developing new meanings that are hidden there in the text of the Torah. And you can find out, it's like, I don't know, the Dodgers will win the World Series. If you just take the first word of that fifth word here and that. So you can use it for ridiculous things to kind of teach. But no, for the rabbis, this gematria is real, not science, but a real tool in finding deeper meanings in the text. And for them, they will use gematria mostly to teach these homiletical lessons, these lessons about values, morality, and ethics, not necessarily to teach Jewish law. So that would be going too far to teach Jewish law from adding up the letters in the word, but they might do that sometimes. I can't think of a case offhand for that. But for a lesson like this, what it does by making Sulam into Mount Sinai is then that the people who are being talked about here in the book of Genesis, even though it looks like it's before the events of Mount Sinai in chapter 20 in the book of Exodus. No, dear reader, the rabbis are saying, no, no, no. That Mount Sinai experience, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah, they had a Mount Sinai experience too. So don't think the rabbis are saying that Mount Sinai happened only once in history and only happened in chapter 20 in Exodus. No, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah, they all knew about Mount Sinai as well. And here's the proof, because Jacob had this dream of the Sulam, and the Sulam is spelled specifically. If we spelled Sulam without vowels, there would be a Vav there between the Samach and the Lam. And if he had the Vav there, that would mess up the Gematria. That wouldn't equal the letters of Mount Sinai. So the fact that the Vav isn't there, and you have the 3-dot diagonal dot vowel there for the U sound, then that also highlights for the rabbis, ooh, it's spelled specifically without a Vav. So must be then that this Gematria is right about how we're supposed to understand that this is Mount Sinai, and that that what Jacob is experiencing here is his own Mount Sinai experience of a revelation of God to him specifically. Okay, and what we also know from below the line, okay, what's the significance about the angels going up the ladder and coming down the ladder? So here, below the line, from this we learn that one set of angels was leaving Jacob, and a different set would accompany him outside the land of Israel. What that comment means is that there are certain angels who are associated with the land of Israel only, and they have to stay in the land of Israel itself. They're not allowed out. And then if one is going to leave the land of Israel, then one needs a new set of angels to be with you outside the land of Israel. So in other words, we have, for the rabbis, this is true. I'm not into angels myself. It's kind of weird kind of stuff. But for the rabbis, it's very important part of their theology, and also explaining about how God works in the world and how we can feel a sense of protection. That for the rabbis, every single human being has their guardian angel. And for them, the idea is we get an extra angel or a different one if we're in the land of Israel. There are special guardian angels just for the land of Israel. And then you get a different one outside the land of Israel. So if any of us travels to Israel, once the plane enters into territorial waters of Israel, then our angel will leave, and the special Israeli angel will be with us, guiding us in the land of Israel. So, it is a little bit comforting. It's kind of hokey, maybe childish to have this kind of image of angels, but for the rabbis, it's very important because it's in the Torah. It's clear that the patriarchs and matriarchs had experiences with angels. Therefore, we all have some kind of experience with angels too. There's the traditional blessing with a prayer that we say before going to bed. So maybe we don't normally have this as part of our routines, but in the regular daily prayer book, it's there. The nighttime, the bedtime prayer. There are allusions. Not just allusions. There are specific mentions of angels in that prayer, asking for your angels to protect you as you go to sleep, because sleep is a mini form of death, and the fact that we wake up in the morning is kind of a mini form of resurrection from the dead. And that experience that our soul had while we were asleep is a holy spiritual experience. To try to connect to what happened to our soul overnight while we were sleeping is important for the rabbis and important for the mystics, especially to try to connect to that subconscious, try to connect to that part of our being that exists when we are physically asleep. Okay, so this is about, so now after that the parentheses there in that comment, Jews have different concerns and different priorities outside the land than they do when living in it. We need different angels to guide us. This is Mordechai Kaplan's idea about this. So whether it's a specific angel guiding us on our way, or whether it's the angel is a metaphor for priorities in our life, we all have our priorities, and um, they should be significant moral, ethical, religious priorities that we have in our life. Okay, so let's read on a little bit. We have a few more minutes. Verse 13. V'hinei Adonai nitzav alav vayomar, Ani Adonai Elohei Avraham Avicha ve'Elohei Yitzchak. Let me translate up to there. And behold, God was standing before him. So now you have this ladder or stairway, angels going up and down, and now all of a sudden God is there. Is God next to the ladder, or does the ladder disappear and then God appears? Don't know. God is standing before Jacob. I am God, I am Adonai, the God of Abraham your father, the Elohei Yitzchak, and the God of Isaac. That's just interesting wording, right? Why doesn't it say Elohei Avraham, the Elohei Yitzchak Avicha? Right? Isaac is Jacob's father. Why does it say why does God say I am God, I am the God of Abraham your father and the God of Isaac? It should be I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac your father. Right? It doesn't, the commentary doesn't elucidate that point. It's just interesting that Jacob's grandfather is referred to by God as Jacob's father.
Could it be almost, I'm sorry, could it be almost like making a reference that Abraham is going to be this patriarch of the family? So he's like the father of your people, and then your dad.
It's possible. I mean, it's certainly, that's how we would understand it, because we know the story 3,000 years later. And by praying to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, yes, they are, Abraham and Sarah were the parents of the Jewish people. But there is no such thing yet when Jacob has this dream. Now, using the rabbi's kind of methodology, well, yes, Jacob was aware of that, because all the patriarchs and matriarchs were aware of the bigger story that was developing, and they were aware of the Torah, and they knew everything, and they knew about the future destruction of the temple and the exile to Babylonia. Clear from the rabbis that the patriarchs knew all this. But let's say he didn't yet. Jacob is just Jacob, and he doesn't know that there's this big destiny awaiting for him, that life is just playing out before him. He doesn't know that. So you would think that Jacob would be kind of caught off guard by God. Well, he knows it's God. God is standing before him, saying, I am the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. It's just unusual. And certainly, Jan, the way you explained it is the way that is an acceptable, normal way to explain this. I'm just saying that the phrasing is kind of odd. And that, yes, grandfathers can be fathers, but Isaac is his father. Why it's put this way, just there's no right answer to that question. It's just that we should note it, and whatever interpretation we come up with, it would be a valid interpretation for that. Haaretz asher ata shochev aleha, the land upon which you are lying, lecha etnena ulezar'echa, I will give it to you and to your descendants. Okay, so this is Jacob's. So Isaac had a vision like this from God, in which God reinforces the promise of the land of Israel, and descendants to him. Abraham had this promise repeated a few times. This is Jacob's first introduction to God and this promise as well. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. Ufaratzta, and you will spread out. You will burst forth. Really? Lifrotz is more like bursting instead of just spreading. Spreading implies different speeds. Something can spread quickly or it can spread slowly, but if it's faratzta, it's bursting. So it's happening fast. Ufaratzta, you will spread out. You will burst out Yama to the west, to the sea, literally, which is west, because the Mediterranean Sea, to the direction of the sea when you're in Israel, is west. Vakedma, east. Vitzafona, north. Vanegba, to the Negev, which is south. Okay, sometimes it's Taimana for the south, but which is Yemen, which is in the time of the Torah. That's about as far south as you're going to go. The tip of the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, if you can picture that in your mind's eye, that bottom tip, that's Yemen. So by saying Taimana as a possible point of the compass to Yemen, here it's even a shorter distance than that, just to the Negev desert, the south of Israel. So you will burst forth to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south. V'nivrachu v'cha, kol mishpachot ha'adama, all the families of the earth will be blessed through you, uvizar echad, and through your descendants. Okay, this ufaratzta line is a song that, if you remember back in the day when we would be singing and dancing with the Torahs on Simchat Torah, ufaratzta yama vakedma tzafona v'negba. It comes from here. That's where that is. This idea that the Jewish people are going to be spread all over the earth. Well, that is true, and that this promise here has become fulfilled. Now, sometimes this implies, yes, Rita, take care and happy Thanksgiving. That this ufarasta implies that God is choosing how, or determining how, we're going to burst forth over the ends of the earth. Now, it turns out in Jewish history that we didn't have much choice in how we spread out, right? Sometimes we went to places because we had no other choice, because we were fleeing for our lives. So that when the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, we're spreading eastward because the Babylonians are forcing us to go east. When the Assyrians came 200 years before that, they exiled us and forced us into exile northeast of Israel. When the Romans destroyed the second temple and forcibly dispersed us, we were dispersed westward in the Roman Empire towards Greece and Italy, and also in North Africa. So, and then from there, whoever is in charge of the territory, imposing fines or instituting persecuting us or other oppressive matters, Jews would leave. And 300 years ago, 200 years ago, the Pale of Settlement in Russia, where Russia forced all the Jews to live in a particular area. So that this ufaratsta, it's not necessarily God determining it, like we're going on our own. As it plays out, we're kind of being forced that way. And then let me just end with this verse 15, which is a nice promise, which is the promise for all generations. V'hinei anochi imach, and behold, I will be with you. Ushmarticha b'chol asher telech, and I will guard you everywhere that you go. V'hashivoticha el ha'adama hazot, and I will return you to this earth. Ki lo ezavacha, because I will not leave you. I will not abandon you. Ad asher imasiti, as long as et asher dibarti lach, as long as I will do that which I have said to you. So in other words, I promise, God is saying, to fulfill my end of the bargain, which is to guard you and to bless you. So this promise, among other promises, is what has sustained us as a Jewish people, no matter our circumstances, and mostly in Jewish history as circumstances of despair and great tragedy, that this has been a promise that is also incorporated into a prayer book, and we say it 3 times a day to give us great comfort and hope and faith in the future. So I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, a Shabbat Shalom as well. Please be safe and be healthy, and look forward to seeing you all back here next Wednesday as well.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Rabbi, I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
So you said something about we don't always kind of consider angels, maybe not.
Right.
During the repetition of the Amida,
Yep.
when we do the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh,
Right. Yep.
don't we have our feet together and we kind of lift up like we're like that one-legged angel?
Absolutely. So yes, so that whether we're trying to be like an angel or trying to get close to God. Okay, so it depends on how you want to understand it. So I understand it as going up on like that a little bit higher. Each word of Kadosh is this very spiritual, intense prayer is an opportunity for us to try to get closer to God. And the more traditional in the Jewish community will take their tallis and kind of put it over their heads to kind of have the focus and concentration and not to be distracted by anything, so that they can really focus on this prayer. Traditionally, we're not supposed to be interrupted at all while we're reciting that Kedusha prayer, as we try to have this encounter with God. So yes, you could see it as we're imagining that we are an angel, or if we're not into the whole idea of angels, you could see it as an opportunity for getting closer, rising up to heaven and getting closer to God. So either way.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good rest of the day. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.